Here we are at belief 15. By now you're probably very aware of changes in your life, but the basic problem, lack of self-confidence, the need to be accepted by others, probably may not yet be totally gone. At this point in the program, some people will see small changes, others will see bigger changes. But I promise you, the problem will be totally gone by the time you're done with this program. As I've reminded you before every other belief, you have to do every step of the let-go belief process in order to eliminate each specific belief. So stay with it. Yeah, it might be a little repetitious to answer the same questions over and over, but you're eliminating negative beliefs you've lived with for a lifetime. And when you're done, you'll possess self-confidence and no longer be concerned with what others think about you. Isn't that worth a few hours of your time? Like the last couple of beliefs, the source of this belief is very different than most of the ones you've already done. So you'll be seeing and hearing some new material. The alternative interpretations will be different also. Please continue to answer each question out loud to make sure the belief is eliminated. This next belief, I'm powerless, isn't as common as many of the ones you've eliminated so far, but it is one that a large number of people hold, and it is one of the beliefs that generally underlies the lack of self-confidence. Here are a few ways to know if you have this belief. Do you get angry a lot? If you do, you probably have this belief. Anger almost always is the result of feeling powerless, even if you aren't aware of that feeling. If you didn't feel powerless to do something about the circumstances, you probably wouldn't feel angry about it. You'd just change it. Do you have the feeling of powerlessness? That feeling almost certainly means you have this belief. Do you frequently feel that you can't do anything about your circumstances? That things just happen to you? That feeling also means you probably have the belief I'm powerless. I used to feel like a ghost, whose behavior had no impact on reality whatsoever. I would do things and the world would act as if I didn't exist. I felt as if I couldn't effect change, as if I had no power to make things happen. Remember, you can hold a belief that intellectually you don't think is true about you. Today, as an adult, you might know that you aren't powerless, but just knowing that isn't enough to eliminate the belief. Ultimately, the way to know if you have this belief is the same way to know if you have any belief. Say the words out loud and pause for a moment. If the words feel true or produce a negative feeling, even a small one, you have the belief. Try it right now. Please say out loud, I'm powerless, and then be still for a moment. Does it feel true or negative at all? If it does, you have the belief. You now know what it feels like to say these words when you have the belief. You'll say the same words out loud at the end of the process and will experience what the same words feel like when you no longer believe the statement. Okay then, let's get rid of I'm powerless. If you're absolutely certain that you don't have this belief, please click Next Belief and proceed to the next belief. If you have the belief, just let the program continue to play. Don't forget, though, that if you do have the belief, you could be missing out on the opportunity to get rid of it forever. And if you believe it even a little bit, and you don't get rid of it, it will undercut your self-confidence. My voice will now stop so you can write down this belief in the text box on your computer monitor. Click Continue when you're ready to continue with the process to eliminate the belief, I'm powerless. The next step to eliminate a belief is to figure out when you formed it. Most of our beliefs, certainly almost all of our self-esteem beliefs, including this belief, were formed from events involving your parents that occurred when you were a very young child. By now it should be clear that in most cases our parents loved us. And they probably didn't have much parenting training. They probably had their own beliefs that were affecting their parenting, and they had some unreasonable expectations. Given all of that, we all formed a lot of beliefs in our childhoods that are having a negative impact on us later in life. It's not our parents' fault. They did what they did. And we gave their behavior meaning, which we can eliminate now. For most people, the source of the belief I'm powerless was not being able to affect what they could do or not do as a child. In many households, children are not allowed to even disagree. They frequently hear, "I'm the father," or the mother, "so you'll do what I say, like it or not." Does that sound familiar? Or what about, "Children should be seen and not heard"? Did you hear that when you were a child? What about the phrase, "It's my way or the highway"? Does that sound familiar? Some people formed this belief because they were unable to stop their parents from fighting, or they couldn't keep one parent from abusing the other. Now take a look at your early life and see where the belief I'm powerless comes from for you. Then, type into the text box on the screen the type of things your parents did and said in your childhood that led you to form this belief, I'm powerless. Rather than writing down how you felt, describe the actual situations, what your parents actually said and did, such as, "My father often said things like, 'When did you become the father in this house?'" Take the time you need because this is important. When you're done writing, click Continue. Now the program will pause. Look at the events you've written down. Is it real to you that the conclusion you reached, I'm powerless, is a valid interpretation of those events? Can you agree that virtually any child at that age and in those situations would have reached a similar conclusion? Now we're going to play the possibilities game. We'll imagine that 4 friends of yours are visiting you and looking at a videotape of the events you just wrote down. Your interpretation of those events when you were a child was, I'm powerless. That is one valid interpretation of Mom and Dad's behavior. That interpretation wasn't wrong, but there are other reasonable interpretations of the same childhood events that you just didn't think of as a child. So let's ask each of your friends for another alternative interpretation. Can you see that one friend might well say, "You might have been powerless as a child. That doesn't mean you'll always be." Couldn't the events in your childhood be explained by this interpretation just as well as your interpretation that I'm powerless? Here's what your second friend says. "You might have been powerless around your parents. That doesn't mean you'll be powerless around other people." Doesn't this interpretation also explain those events in your childhood just as well as your interpretation that I'm powerless? Here's a third possible interpretation of your childhood events that one of your friends suggests. You weren't inherently powerless as a human being. You just didn't have the skills and tools you needed to be able to use your power. When you get older, you'll have communication skills and reasoning skills that will make you powerful. Doesn't this interpretation also explain those events in your childhood just as well as your interpretation that I'm powerless? Here's another interpretation from your fourth friend. As long as your survival depends on someone else, you're powerless around that person, but not around other people. Couldn't any one of these interpretations explain your childhood interactions with your parents just as well as your interpretation, I'm powerless? Of course they can. So is it real to you that a belief you've lived with almost your entire life, something you thought was a fact, is not a fact, isn't the truth at all? It's only a truth, merely one interpretation of many possible interpretations of earlier events, right? With a little help from me and your friends, you can see that not being able to impact your life as a child could have at least 4 different reasonable interpretations or meanings. Do you remember what you wrote down a few minutes ago as the source of your belief, I'm powerless? Look at the text box below on your screen. Right now, imagine seeing what you saw then and hearing what you heard then. Right now, take a few minutes and really imagine the events of your childhood that led you to forming the belief I'm powerless. Didn't it seem when you were a child as if you could actually see I'm powerless in those early events with your parents? It did, didn't it? You may have the sense that you didn't see the belief, you felt it. Once you formed the belief I'm powerless, you probably did feel it. I'll get back to the feeling in a minute, but what I'd like you to focus on now is not the feeling, but on my question. When you had to do what your parents wanted and had no say in the matter, didn't it seem as if you saw I'm powerless? As if you could point to it? As if you could have said to me, can't you see I'm powerless? I didn't hear you. Did you say yes? Now that you think you saw I'm powerless as a child, I'd like you to look again. Did you really see I'm powerless? If you did, what does I'm powerless look like? Could you really point to it? Does I'm powerless have a color, a shape, location? Is it real to you now that you saw events but never really did see I'm powerless? If anything you can really see can be described, and if you can't describe what I'm powerless looks like, is it clear now that you never really saw it? Since you never really saw I'm powerless, what did you actually see? Is it clear now all you really saw was your parents telling you what you couldn't do? In other words, all you really saw was a series of events? You see, what happened was that you looked at a series of events that can be interpreted in many different ways. You gave the events one meaning, which was I'm powerless. By attributing that specific meaning to the events, each time you were told what you had to do and had no ability to change the circumstances, it was as if you could see that meaning in those situations. But you didn't discover the meaning in the events, you gave the meaning to the events. They had no meaning before you created one. Is it real now that the events had no meaning until you gave one to them? Here's another way to understand that events have no inherent meaning. When I say that, I'm saying you don't know anything for sure about what you will have the power to do in the future as a result of these childhood experiences. What do I know for sure about what you'll be able to do when you're an adult, from knowing that your choices were limited as a child? Is it clear that I wouldn't know anything? And if I don't know anything, you don't either. All you know for sure is what actually happened. You didn't get what you wanted a lot of the time. And finally, if you never saw I'm powerless out there in the world, where has it been all these years? Did I hear you say that I'm powerless has only ever existed in your mind? That you never did see it out there in the world? That's right. Now, if the belief is more real to you as a feeling than as a concept, here's another way to look at it. Didn't it seem as if your parents' behavior and comments when you were a child made you feel I'm powerless? But you just agreed that the events have no meaning. Is it possible for events that have no meaning to make you feel I'm powerless, or anything else for that matter? Of course not. So if frequently not getting what you wanted as a child couldn't have made you feel I'm powerless, what did make you feel that? By now I think you know the answer to that question. Please answer out loud. That's right. You felt that only because that's the meaning you had already given to frequently not getting what you wanted. Let me help you make this real. Imagine that I had been there when you were a little child, and it helped you realize there were alternative interpretations. And after that conversation you concluded, maybe I am powerless as a child in these circumstances. That doesn't mean I'll always be powerless. So here's what I'd like you to do now. Take a moment and really imagine being a child and wanting something badly, and mom and dad tell you you can't have it. As you imagine the events, apply this different interpretation to their behavior. And really notice how it feels to be a child who's thinking, maybe I am powerless in these circumstances as a child. That doesn't mean I'll always be powerless. You can use the pause button below to pause the video while you make this childhood scenario more real for yourself. When you're done imagining, press the play button. As you imagine this scene, does it still feel like your parents' words and actions are making you feel I'm powerless? Probably not. And if you didn't feel I'm powerless then, would you feel it now? Again, the answer is no. So Mom and Dad's comments never caused you to feel I'm powerless. That feeling came from your interpretation of their behavior and comments. And since your feelings were not caused by events in reality, they were only the result of a meaning you made up to explain the events, is it real that the feelings you had when you had little or no power to affect your circumstances as a child didn't tell you anything at all about your power to do so when you grew up? They didn't, did they? Okay, now take a deep breath, let it out slowly, and then say out loud, I'm powerless. Is it the truth? Does it still feel like the truth? Your answer is very important here. Don't forget, we form beliefs to give meaning to events that have no real meaning. Having done that, we then think we observe the meaning in the events, out there in the world. It becomes a fact for us. Once we realize that the earlier events never had any real meaning, that the meaning was only in our mind, that it was never a fact, and that the feeling we had was caused by the meaning we gave the meaningless events, the belief disappears forever. Take another deep breath and say, I'm powerless, out loud. I'll bet it feels very different when you say these words now than when you said them at the beginning of this exercise. Do these words feel true, even a little bit? Unless the belief is 100% gone and the words don't feel true at all, you probably still have the belief. Remember, holding a belief is like being pregnant. You either is or you ain't. There's no sort of. If the belief is still there, it probably still seems like you saw it. Once it no longer seems as if you saw I'm powerless in those early events, the belief will be gone. So please click the repeat button to repeat that step of the process. If the belief is gone, please click continue. Now that you're clear, the belief really is gone, let me congratulate you for eliminating your 15th belief. You only have 4 more beliefs and a few conditionings to eliminate, and your lack of self-confidence and your need for others to accept and approve of you will be totally gone for good. By now you should start to notice some real changes in your behavior and feelings. Are you aware of them? Take a minute right now and make real to yourself the changes that have occurred since you began this program. What's happened to the little voice in your head? What's the status of your self-doubt? Are you still as concerned with what others think of you and with being included? Click the pause button to give yourself plenty of time to make real these and other changes in your life. Click the play button when you're ready to resume the program. Before you move on to the next belief, you might want to revisit the process, who am I really? It enables you to feel that you're the creator of your life. You experience on a very profound level that anything is possible, and you have no limitations. All sense of victimization disappears. Now you can either click Who Am I Really?, click Next Belief to get rid of another belief, or close this program. Then make a note to yourself when you plan to return and resume the program.